Well, to me, The Settlers is a game where a lot of little people are running around, work for me and create a beautiful kingdom, and at the end I'm the boss of everything.
The most special thing is that whenever you start an action in the game, there's a whole cascade of events that it starts. And you can watch all those effects, and it can happen that you initiate something and 20 minutes later something else happens still.
All this cuteness, little animated figures running around your village. But also one very important point for me is that the time sink. You can spend so much hours playing the game and optimizing your ecosystem and so on.
So everything's connected, and you can for a long time optimize and tune your economy.
Settlers is such a big IP now, such a big brand. One of the biggest ones in Germany from German team, and I'm now very proud of being part of it.
In the 20 years since its inception, The Settlers has come to stand for in-depth economic management, real-time strategy, and last but by no means least, what has come to be known as the distinctive bustle factor. The little hard-working settlers were a great success. From the time they first appeared on the market on June 30th, 1993 for the Amiga, a PC version followed 1 year later, succeeded by 7 equally popular sequels over the years. This whole journey started with a small team of creative individuals. We decided to take a deeper look at the Settlers from their humble beginnings. We talked to people who were there when it all started. We talked to them about the original idea, about their first contact with the Settlers series, and what it felt like to work on the first installments of the Settlers.
I was also inspired by other games like Populous or Little Computer People or SimCity, but the whole concept of Settlers, of course, is really unique. And originally I came to Thomas Herzler, the CEO of Blue Byte, those days, and I came with 2 concepts. For one, I even had a prototype, but when I started talking about the Settlers and my imagination of what the game should look like, he was absolutely convinced and told me, let's do this one. So I started. So originally I started creating the game alone. So I did all like design and of course all the coding. And in the second year there was an additional artist, Christoph Werner, who created all the nice arts. And then in the final months a lot of my friends helped, so my living room was basically changed into a QA department. And yeah, we tested the game for some months there.
I've been working at Blue Byte in the end of 1980s, long time ago, and I've been doing various games, but one task for me was to do QA for Settlers 1, so that was the basic version I played.
My first contact with Settlers was many years ago when I played Settlers 1 as a fan, not as a worker in the games industry. I played it many times with my friends because I had that split screen option where I can play together, and I played it for so many hours I cannot remember.
Yeah, it's completely different to nowadays. So those days, very few, ideally one very passionate person could really create a whole game. And Settlers 1 is an example for that. So, for example, the code is 70,000 lines of assembler. It's in one file and there are basically no comments. So I only had to agree with myself.
And while playing Settlers 1, some ideas grown up in my mind, which I wrote down later on, and that was the basic start for Settlers 2.
My first Settlers was the Settlers 2, and I got it as a gift from somebody working at Blue Byte at these times. It was in the year of 1997, so long time ago, and I started playing that game and I quickly got addicted. It was a very good game and I really loved it, and so that I could join Blue Byte a long time later, 10 years later, was really a very nice surprise that I would later join this big company creating this great game.
The Settlers 2 team, that was something that I experienced when I was at Blue Byte, were mainly 4 people, so a very small team. The development was around half a year as far as I can remember, and it's not comparable to the development nowadays.
My first contact with Blue Byte was when Ubisoft bought it. So I was working at Ubisoft at the time in Düsseldorf, and there was a rumor. We feel that we might have bought a company, and you can imagine, especially all the marketing and salespeople were very, very excited about that, because this is a very big game and a very well-known company that we bought. And then just a few weeks later, I was offered to work at Blue Byte, so then I really went there, and I was the producer of the Settlers. So that was in 2001.
If you compare the game development process today with how games were made back in the day, you will see some major differences, not least in terms of graphics. The team grew exponentially. The graphics improved. But what was more important? Graphics or perfect gameplay? Watch our video to find out how the team balanced the growing demands placed on them.
Those days, good game design was really more important than good graphics, and I think it's the same now. So there were only a few years in between where maybe good graphics could hide a bad design, but nowadays, especially with free-to-play, it's even more important to convince players that you have a good game, and you can only deliver this game experience with a great game design.
I think for any game that you want to play for, let's say, more than just a few minutes, the game mechanics, the game design is the most important ingredient. The graphics can grab your attention, let's say, for the first minutes, or maybe even a bit longer if it's really spectacular. But to continue playing, and that was the same back then compared to today, from my point of view, the game mechanics have to take over. And especially with a game like Settlers. Yes, you can probably play for hours and just enjoy all the animations, and that's really, really cool. But if you don't like the game design, if you don't like the gameplay, you will stop playing. And today, to me, it's the exact same thing.
Well, the gameplay is very special for Settlers, and it's something that brings you very deep in the game and that lets you play for hours and hours again. However, the graphics itself are very cute since the beginning. If you imagine Settlers 1, that was in the 90s, 20 years ago, even in these times, the graphics were really great. It was very detailed, you could see everything. Even if it was quite pixel-like from the graphic style, it was brilliant, even in these times.
The team was very small. A game could be done in months, not in years, with quite a few people. So the programming, the graphics was of course important, and it had to be at a certain quality, but the game idea was the most important thing to start with.
So Settlers 1 and Settlers 2 really, and especially Settlers 1 of course, introduced this genre. It was a huge leap to see this kind of strategy game. With all these cycles, economic cycles and so on. So that was really, really good. And the second one just improved that in many ways. And I played the first one after I played the second one, and I really said, like, no, I don't want to play the first one. The second one just improved it a lot, I think. And then the third one really introduced more real-time strategy elements, like directly controlled fighters. And that really changed the dynamics of the game quite a bit. And number 4 then again was an improval of that.
After Settlers 2, the gameplay moved a little bit to more real-time gameplay, but we really liked the old style Settlers games. So the idea was just to bring the old gameplay to a new level, including new graphics, new possibilities we didn't have before. Yeah, just to go on with the old ideas.
When I made a sequel to a game, I always try to really offer new experiences to the player. So we really completely changed the road system. Also, multiplayer was added to the game, and the combat system was completely reworked. As far as I know, there's still a Settlers 3 server active nowadays, which is like 15 years now.
What we decided for Settlers 5 was to go more in the real-time direction. So with a little bit less focus on the construction part and some more options in the fighting part. And then for Settlers 6, we focused very much on city building, really building a medieval city. And one of the signs of that was that we introduced a storage in the middle of the city, with the marketplace up front, where everybody has to go to get his stuff. And we also introduced needs for the citizens. Both of those games were pretty successful, but from a content point of view, from a brand point of view, we were not so happy with the way it was going. So In Settlers 7 we went back and forth at the same time. So we introduced some new things. We introduced the victory point system, and we also went back to, especially in terms of production chains, we went a bit back to even Settlers 2. And to me, Settlers 7 really is the best of the series. I played it a lot. I mean, I was responsible for the production, so I had to play it while it was being developed. But after we released the game after launch date, at home in my spare time, I just played it like crazy. It was so much fun. I think the campaign was great, and the multiplayer sessions with the victory points, I think they were really, really good. So I'm a big fan still today.
Talking about the Settlers series means not only talking about box titles, of course. The latest major success in the series is the Settlers Online, which is a free-to-play browser game, playable in more than 40 countries worldwide. Find out what our The Settlers veterans have to say about this.
So after Settlers 3 I basically switched to multiplayer games, and I didn't track the sequels a lot. But now Settlers Online is, I think, it's a very interesting project, and I really appreciate that. And I think there's a lot of new opportunities in this market for the series.
So what we as a company have seen in, around that time is that free-to-play games pretty much were there to stay. I mean, you see those browser-based online games, and in the beginning we thought, well, that's an interactive website, who's going to play that? And then suddenly we see like, wow, this is really successful, and they really start to look like games. And lots of those games out there really looked a bit like Settlers. They weren't called Settlers, obviously, but they looked a bit like it. So we said, well, we can maybe do this better. So we started this project, and at the time we had looked at different ways to bring Settlers to different platforms. So this was just another try, and it worked very well.
When we started Settlers Online, it was still a test balloon. We wanted to try if it really works. Nobody knew if this is the way to go. And then when we launched it, it was already appreciated by the audience. We had 15,000, 20,000 people on the very first day playing that game without even announcing it. And since then it became very, very big. We have now millions and millions of people in our game playing Settlers Online every day.
I think it was a great success. So and it was very successful. They managed to bring that feeling of a game and that spirit of the Settlers series to a browser game. And it's so difficult because you have not a game that you can play for some hours and then you start the next mission. You play it for months. And that is really a big challenge, and I think it was a very good step, and I'm really looking forward what will be the next step.
For us it was very important that it's really not a pay-to-win game, but a free-to-play game. So yes, we like it when people pay to save some time, but you don't have to do it. And it proved to work very well with the Settlers game system, with the Settlers game mechanics. And people really appreciated it.
If it's great, because I think that the free-to-play approach is the way to go nowadays. It also, due to the limits of the browser version right now, it looks quite similar to the very old Settlers part. It's not in 3D yet. This all will come maybe in future, but right now it's a natural evolvement of what Settlers should be for me.
I think the launch time was a moment where it really fit very well. So we had an enormous success from day one, pretty much. So yeah, that's how it went online, and I think it works quite well.
One single guy had a bright idea more than 20 years ago and got the ball rolling on one of Germany's most distinctive and successful gaming series. Join us as we look at the constant creative evolution of the Settlers that turned it into an industry standard in the field of strategy gaming for 2 whole decades. Celebrate with us as Blue Byte sets the franchise up for a successful future with the Settlers Online for another 20 years.